Shulavarana Gauravaradeham Vilasita Niravadi Bhavavideham Gauravaradeham Vilasita Niravadi Bhavavideham Tribhuvana Bhavana Kripayanesham Tam Pranamami Cha Sri Sachitananda.
Hello everybody, welcome to According to the Vedas. I am Mike Evans. Thank you all for joining again. This is a program where we discuss certain topics that are found in the Vedas and compare them to the modern knowledge and beliefs and practices out there. So today I want to talk about yoga. Now, when I say yoga, most people, pretty much 99% of people probably, are going to think of the postures. You hold a posture and you're holding it and then you go to another posture. That was some warrior there for you. Yeah, very exciting. But what is yoga according to the Vedas and Vedanta? And first, I want to discuss how yoga came to be the postures, and that was in the 50s and 60s. Several swamis from India, wearing their saffron robes, came here and brought the science of asanas, which means postures, and taught it. Mainly, it became a way to stay in shape, and it was a lot about exercise and a way to stay healthy, which is very important. We do need to keep our bodies healthy and balanced. However, yoga actually means much, much more than just these postures. And so we are going to take a journey to the internet, and let us bring up our internet here. So we're going to go to Wikipedia and we're going to look up yoga. Very exciting. Here we go. Woo. All right. Going to the internet, going to Wikipedia, and we're going to search for yoga. And one of the first things that comes up is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, these are, a couple thousand years old, more or less. Scholars don't know, they just guess. But these are Indian sutras that constitute the foundational text of yoga. So this is where we can find what is real yoga. So as you see here, it is a collection of 196 Indian sutras or aphorisms, and they say they were compiled 400 CE. So they're just taking a stab. And there are 8 components of yoga you see here. Yoga is not just postures and asanas. There are actually 8 different steps of yoga, which ultimately lead to samadhi. Now, if some of you are not familiar with that word or are familiar with it, samadhi is the highest level of meditative trance and realization. So these 8 processes are designed to bring you to that final stage. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? So, number 1 is yamas. So the very first step of yoga is yamas, which are moral imperatives. Those 5 moral imperatives are nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, chastity, and non-possessiveness. So you see, these are very similar to the 10 Commandments. And I could go on about those, but we can keep moving. Now, number 2, once you've got those down, now you can move to niyama, which are virtuous habits. And they are purity, contentment, austerity, studying the Vedas, studying knowledge, and contemplation of Ishvara, which is another name of God. And once these are in the back pocket, then we move to asanas. And asana is defined as a motionless and agreeable form of asana, a posture that one holds for a period of time, staying relaxed, steady, comfortable, motionless. And actually, as you see here, there's not too many specifics about the type of asanas. The reason for the asana is to facilitate what comes next. And what comes next is pranayama. Now, prana is the life essence. In Chinese belief, they call it qi, and there's other names for it as well, but this is in air. And so pranayama are breathing exercises which go hand in hand with the asanas. And the reason for these is so that we can move on to the second half of the eightfold yoga system, and the first beginning of the second half, leading to samadhi, is pratyahara. And this is drawing one's awareness within, retracting the material sense objects. So it's not simply closing your eyes, it's bringing your attention inward. They say it's almost like if your 5 senses are like the 2 legs, 2 arms, and the head of a turtle. You bring them within the shell, and then it goes on from there. Dharana is concentration, introspective focus, one-pointedness of mind. So this is an extension of pratyahara. Then dhyana, which is reflecting, deep reflection on what you are concentrating on dharana. And what you are concentrating on is mentioned back up here in niyama, and that's contemplation of Ishvaras, God. So true self, unchanging reality. So this is the whole purpose of yoga. And then finally, one may be eligible to reach samadhi, which is the oneness with the subject of meditation. Oneness with God, and this does not mean that we lose our physical form and become one, even at the time of death. This means that our desire is one with God, that God has desires for us, for the world, and when we are in harmony with that desire, then total harmony, it can be said we are in samadhi. And so the asanas that are being called yoga is not yoga at all. It's one part of yoga that has this meaning has for the most part been stripped, because you don't have any of this beginning. So all of these things in the beginning, practicing or studying to some degree, begins to purify us. We have been in contamination with this material consciousness of temporary nature, of we always want something, we always have time that we have to adhere to, and we always have to be doing all of these things. And so I did want to also go to our old friend, the Veda base. Sorry, I already got the page pulled up here. So the Bhagavad-Gita is an excerpt from the Mahabharata, which is called the 5th Veda. And the Bhagavad-Gita has an entire chapter on yoga. So I searched for yoga here and Bhagavad-Gita. And the 6th chapter is all about the eightfold yoga system. You see it here. So let's go through some of that for us. So first off, the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad means God, Bhagavan. and Gita means song. So this literally means the song of God. And Sanskrit actually is a sung language, that every verse, the meter, it has a predisposition for a certain rhythm and melody. So if there's a verse that is 17 syllables, you sing it a certain way. And so it's a sung language. And even when people would speak with each other, they would sing it. And actually it would be poetic, every word and every line that was spoken. And you may say this sounds crazy, but actually I was listening to a scholar the other day. He was saying that he had a professor that could do this. He could speak in Sanskrit so beautifully, and that it sounded like he was reciting a verse, but he could actually compose. So this was the intelligence of that time. The intelligence is not so much anymore, but so it's a song of God, and God as Krishna is actually speaking this to his friend and disciple who has inquired. He has inquired questions, and Krishna is answering. So the beginning of the 6th chapter, Krishna says, "One who is unattached to the fruit of his work, and who works as he is obligated, is in the renounced order of life. He is a true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty." So that is to lead into this, which is what is called renunciation, which we saw here. Renunciation is one who is unattached to the fruits of his work. One who performs his work not expecting anything in return, which is very difficult to do, especially in a material conception. Our work is to get something in return. Even if we're at a job, obviously we're working for money, but have you ever done something for a friend or a loved one, and then you expect something in return, even if it's a thank you, or even if it's appreciation, and if you don't receive it, then you realize that you are attached to the result that you expected because you didn't get it, and you get upset. So we can see how we are attached to the fruits of our work, but one that is unattached and who is in renunciation, we should be known that to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. So this is another way to go about reaching the result of the Eightfold Yoga process, and that is through this renunciation of the attachment to the fruits of our work. And that's what the Eightfold process is designed to do. It's not something that you can just decide to do. We've spent our entire lifetime being attached to the results of our work, and even many lifetimes. And so one can never become a yogi unless he renounces a desire for sense gratification. So this is the challenge. For one who is a neophyte means beginner, in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So sometimes you read a verse here that it needs some more explanation. It's pretty thick in there, so we can actually click here. And there is an explanation of every single verse. So here we have the process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. This is real yoga. And it is an essential part of human desire in this world to link ourselves with the topmost. That desire leads people to all types of religious activities all around the world. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the material entity and rises up to perfect self-realization. So anywhere on that ladder, we can find ourselves, and we can get on and keep going. And actually, it's said in the Bhagavad-Gita that whatever progress you make in the spiritual sense, it is eternal. So if you ever get off and you don't lose your place, you get to start right back to where you began, which is nice. So, according to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into 3 parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the latter is called the Yoga Rurukshu stage. The highest is the Yoga Rudra. And here's a little more. Concerning the Eightfold Yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities leading to achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. So at first, when we begin, we do have fruitive material activities, but those activities lead to perfecting our mental state so that we can control the senses and focus on Ishvara, so the Supreme, and linking ourselves with the Supreme. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. Well, I hope I know what that's like one day, because mental activities disturb me all the time. And it says here that being engaged in the service of Krishna, a name of God which means the all-attractive or source of attraction, he is considered to have ceased all material activities. So this constantly engaged. So whatever little bit that we are able to engage in real yoga and real sincerity, then we can make that advancement. And asanas and pranayama are a part of that. Through these postures and these breathing exercises, we can help to focus our mind. That's the point of the exercises. Even people that are not yoga practitioners or pranayama or anything, all kinds of therapy, you'll learn about breathing exercises. They have breathing exercises for anger management. And what happens when you breathe is that your mind focuses on that breath for that moment and nothing else. When you take a big, deep breath and then exhale it, you're thinking about the breath. For the first one, for sure. As you continue, the mind focus may wane, but you can always bring it back to that breath because it's something that you're doing. The mind always wants to be doing something through the senses. It always wants to be typing something, always wants to be reading something, looking at things, scrolling. It always wants to be tasting something, always wants to be going somewhere, seeing something. The mind is restless. That's why, the source of insomnia is they have a restless mind. They can't stop thinking about what's going to happen in the future, worrying. They can't help but to lament what happened in the past. What could I have done better? What didn't I do? What can I do to fix those problems in the future? And it's just reciprocal. But that breathing, that pranayama, bringing in the life force intentionally with specific types of breathing exercises that are designed to maximize the prana that you receive, are going to advance us in this process. And so let's read a little more. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Now, this is actually the mark of a very advanced soul. And we unfortunately live in a world where it is said in the Vedas that a person is either of two types. He is a cheater or he is the cheated. And so there are a lot of people looking to cheat those that are sincere, especially in spiritual matters and religious matters. And we can practically see it in every religious faith. And it's a reality. It's nothing to be ashamed of for whatever religious practice that you practice. It's simply a human tendency. And so we have to be cautious of those in a position of a priest or a pastor or a swami or a guru. And so here we are seeing how we can recognize a person who is elevated in real yoga. And that is a person who does not act for sense gratification or engage in fruitive activities. Now, what may appear to be sense gratification to us may not be, because the same activity can have two completely different meanings depending on the mindset of the person. For example, in the Vedas, it says that for advancement in spiritual life, that one should eat something called prasadam. Now, what prasadam is food that has been prepared in a very specific way. I won't get into it here, but it's so that it's fit to offer to God, to Bhagavan and Krishna. And when it is offered, then it becomes touched by God, and it becomes purified and even spiritual. And that when we eat that we also purify and spiritualize our body. Now, so you may see someone eating and eating and eating, but if they're eating prasadam, even though they may be acting on a platform of some degree of sense gratification, because they are eating prasadam, then it should be noted that it is not simply a fruit of activity, that they are actually engaging in a spiritual activity, and everything can be done in a spiritual way in this sense, if we take ourselves out of the center of it. Because the fruit of activity mindset comes because we are in the center of all of our activities. Where there's other players in the activity, we have family, we have friends, we have coworkers, all these things, but we're the main character. So we have to remove ourselves from the center of that to remove this over time, this propensity for fruit of activities. So a couple more verses I want to read. Now these verses are huge in learning how to perform real yoga. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade. Am I still online here? I saw something that popped up here. Let me go. Are we still streaming? I guess so. Okay. Well, let's keep rolling. Party time. So for one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. And this means that, the mind we discussed earlier, and as I've been reading, is restless. And for one that is working on controlling the mind will actually see the human is habitual. We're not born necessarily with all of the likes and dislikes and desires and aversions that we have right now at the age of 30 or 40 or whatever you are. So those develop over time. And so similarly, if we are performing these yoga activities with desire to link ourselves with true knowledge and God, the source of that knowledge, then our mind will start to enjoy certain aspects of it. Like, for example, earlier we were reading about Jnana Yoga. So Jnana means knowledge. So it's the yoga process of knowledge, of study. And there are people that are more attracted to that. Then there's also Dhyana Yoga or Karma Yoga, which is the the yoga of activities, of performing activities of your duty, your eternal duty. It's called Dharma. So people have different propensities. Some people like to lock themselves in rooms and study all day. Other people like to go out and get their hands dirty and work. Those are both types of yoga. And the mind will be attracted to its natural propensity. However, for one that struggles with the mind will lead us to do all kinds of things that we don't want to do. Now, everyone has experienced this, I would imagine. There's something you shouldn't do, and you do it anyways, whatever it might be. And so there is a chapter in the Bhagavad-Gita which discusses this in great length. And it is the third chapter, so while I'm here, I'm just going to skip over to the third chapter and can read a little bit about it. So, Bhagavad-Gita chapter 3 and verse 36. So here you have Arjuna, which is Krishna's friend and devotee, asking Krishna, O descendant of Vrishni, that's Krishna, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Which is what I was just saying. And Krishna says, it is lust only, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath. And the living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. Not all of us have the same levels of lust that lead us to do different crazy things. So that is also another way to identify the level of a realization of a person, is to see if you can see the lust, and oftentimes lust is very subtle. And our own lust can cloud our vision, so it can be very difficult. But when the living entity's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, it is never satisfied and it burns like fire. So it's described in the Vedas that we have these material desires, and they're never satisfied no matter how much we try. So we are always trying to satisfy our desires. But it's described in the Vedas that this is like trying to put out a fire with butter, with liquid butter. It's called ghee. So if you had a fire and you threw oil on it, if it was a small fire, then that fire would go down for a little bit because you're putting liquid on top of it, but it's flammable liquid. So then it's going to shoot up and explode. So that's what happens to our life when we're trying to satisfy our desires. We're putting the butter on our desires thinking it's going to satisfy it, and it never does. It just increases and increases, and it actually will never stop increasing until it's not satisfied, and then we become angry. And that's what this verse is describing, that through unsatisfied desire, we become wrathful. And the senses, the mind, the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. So it's described in the Vedas also that our body is comprised of 8 essential elements, 5 material elements, and 3 more subtle elements. So the 5 are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And we can see that all of those things are present in our body. Even fire, the digestive system, it burns. It has a fire in it, So when our body becomes fevered, our whole body can be like fire, And that's just a process of the body. So all those are there. But the subtle elements that we cannot touch and feel are mind, intelligence, and ego, false ego, our false sense of who we are. That's considered the most subtle elements of our body. And so the mind and intelligence and the senses are where this lust is, and it covers our real knowledge, and it bewilders us. So our senses, the lust in our senses is what is bewildering us. And then Krishna offers a solution. He says, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slaying the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So this issue with material lust is very serious. It destroys knowledge, destroys self-realization. It's the antithesis of it. And going forward, there's a couple more verses. Let's finish it off. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the individual, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So there you have the hierarchy of all of these things. And knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. So oneself is the soul. The soul is who we are. We are not our mind. We are not our intelligence. And Krishna is saying, knowing that you, the soul, are higher than the mind and intelligence, and what to speak of the senses, steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, the Ashtanga Yoga process, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. And so there you have it. That's a little bit about the yoga system. I guess I'm going to wrap it up here. So thank you all very much for joining. I do appreciate it. And if there's anything you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment. I'll appreciate it. Give a like and follow. And until next time.